And we're live. Good evening, everybody. It's Brendan Baylod from the Wisconsin Underwater Archaeology Association. We've got a great program in store for you. Welcome to the monthly WUAA podcast titled Submerged History with our special guest, Russ Green. For those of you who are, here stumbled on this by accident. Russ Green is the superintendent of our new Wisconsin Shipwreck Coast National Marine Sanctuary. And we're really excited to have Russ on the program. Welcome, Russ.
Yeah, thank you, man. I really appreciate having an opportunity to share some sanctuary stuff with everybody.
Awesome. Thanks for doing this. For those of you new to the show, we do 5 pictures and 5 questions. It's a way to keep things focused and keep me from running too long, because I have a bad habit of doing that. You know, people who don't want to sit for a whole hour and watch the show don't have to do it. Couple of housekeeping things I'd like to get out of the way. First of all, if you're watching this live, you can feel free to comment if you want in the window. Let us know you're there. Also, if you're not watching this live, keep in mind that this will be posted on our YouTube channel for the WUAA and shared widely on social media. So you will have a chance to watch it later if you didn't catch it live. All right. A little bit of WUAA housekeeping. We have a big event coming up this weekend for the WUAA. It's our field school in Manitowoc. We're going to do a hydrographic survey of Maritime Bay, which is the little bay just to the north of the harbor there at Manitowoc. We're going to cover it in high-resolution side-scan sonar in the morning for the field school, and then in the afternoon we'll have a classroom portion where we are going to review and process the data, and everyone will get a copy of the viewing software and a copy of the data files that we record. We're also going to create a mosaic that we'll put up on Google Earth, and we'll also distribute the KML file for that to all of our students. The boat is full for the morning session, but we still have some seats for the classroom session. This is going to be held at the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. The classroom session starts at 1 p.m. If you're interested in joining us for that this weekend, that would be the 1st of June, go ahead and ping me and let me know. I can get you signed up. Otherwise, the other thing that I just want to remind everybody, the WUAA is actively doing field work most of the summer. We've got a number of good projects planned. Check our monthly member update, which I send out to the entire membership about mid-month for things that are going on with not only WUAA, but our partners like the State Historical Society's Maritime Archaeology Program, the new Wisconsin Shipwreck Coast National Marine Sanctuary, and the Wisconsin Maritime Museum. All right. Well, without further ado, let's get going. So Russ, as I mentioned, it's sort of 5 pictures of your choice, and then I'm going to ask questions about them. So you sent some really interesting images to me. I'm going to go ahead and take myself out of here, and let's take a look at what you sent. All right. So Russ, this map is pretty busy. I see our sanctuary is highlighted in there. What is going on in this map, and what does it tell us?
Yeah, thanks. Good questions. And this is kind of like Christmas. I get to get reminded of what images I sent you. So this map, and just for folks that are listening in, we thought we'd choose images that were not specific shipwrecks, or maybe even some of the underwater archaeology that we do, or some of the field work we do, but something a little bit broader to share a little more information about the sanctuary and some of the other things we do. We have a pretty big canvas to work with, that is Lake Michigan, and so we kind of take a wide approach to the work we do. This map is a good example of that. So this is the bathymetry coverage that has been done by NOAA to date. And essentially this is for charting. So the Office of Coast Survey, which is under NOAA, is charged with mapping and charting U.S. waters so ships can navigate safely. However, you can do a lot with that data. And so we were really keen to get the Office of Coast Survey to work here in the sanctuary. And indeed, it came to pass in 2021 and 2022. They were able to map, pretty much all of the sanctuary, ostensibly for charting, but you certainly can use that information to find cultural resources and to do other things like habitat mapping. So this year, we'll have teams in the sanctuary working to do the ground truthing, basically get imagery that matches up with the sonar data so that we can create a habitat map for the entire sanctuary. So there's a lot of double dip with this data. What's really cool about this map is you can see there hasn't been a lot done in the Great Lakes. One of the jobs of the sanctuary program is to raise awareness of the Great Lakes and to direct NOAA resources to this place to get this work done. The mapping is really important to conservation efforts. So what's cool about it is that polygon in Lake Michigan is exactly the shape of the sanctuary. And it's a good way to remind ourselves of a big job that we have to do, which is to pull in extra resources to this area of Lake Michigan to get good work done. And so it's the biggest polygon in the lakes that has been mapped to date. It's the biggest contiguous area that's been done. There are other pockets. There's a lot of LIDAR that's been done. The pink kind of outline around the lakes, that's LIDAR, that's bathymetric LIDAR. So that's kind of an airborne, airborne sonar to put it in the simplest terms. So there's been a lot done, but it's really cool to see the entire sanctuary done. If you look on the East Coast, man, it's just been mapped and gets remapped often, as it should. But one of the things this image does is it reminds us that we need to let people know that the Great Lakes need to be looked at and surveyed just as much as the East and West Coast. So this is a good start. We're happy to have something the shape of our sanctuary done, but there's a lot more advocacy to be done to continue to have NOAA map in the Great Lakes and eventually map them all by 2030. Folks may know about the Lakebed 2030 effort, a consortium of partners, federal partners, nonprofits, state partners, anyone that has an interest in mapping of the Great Lakes. All of those efforts are trying to be combined into a single effort to map all of the Great Lakes by 2030 in high resolution. I think that's another, for the last point on this, that's another important point. The work that was done in the sanctuary was, really high resolution multi-beam survey. And it's the kind of thing we need to do across the entire lakes to really get a good understanding of the bottom and the habitat.
And I think, Russ, it's my understanding that there was a lot of really interesting stuff found, everything from these big round crater structures to, ancient sand dune structures and, of course, shipwrecks. Will there be work done to interpret those things to the public in the future?
Yeah, for sure. In fact, we're going to go take a look at some of these in a couple of weeks. And I'll talk more about that at the end. Yeah, for sure. One of the things that's really interesting about this, and it really bugs me, that we say this data is publicly accessible, which it is. So the data that's been, the sanctuary that's been mapped, that data is accessible. It's on a place called the National Centers for Environmental Information. But you got to be sort of GIS savvy to really use that data. So what we would like to see done is a viewer. So if you're the public or a biologist or a water quality manager or the DNR, someone that's really interested in this data, you should really be able to access a Google Map type interface so that you can really explore the bottom, because it's very detailed and there's a lot going on there. So that hasn't been done. So that's something we would like to see done. We're working with the University of Wisconsin Green Bay. There's a class up there, a GIS class, that's actually working on kind of a prototype viewer so that you really could browse the sanctuary, the bottomlands of the sanctuary in that way, and see some of these resources. So we'll go take a look at some of them in the coming weeks. But what we'd really like to do is continue to share this information with people like yourself. Brendan, I know you've been out and looked at many of these places and really have a citizen science component to exploring the sanctuary, but do it strategically so that we can take this data together as a body of people that are interested in exploring and following up on these interesting finds, but do it in a strategic way, and that's aligned with the state's interest. Of course, as you know, the sanctuary is co-managed by NOAA and the state of Wisconsin. So we do everything in tandem with them. But having the mapping done is a big first step. Going out there and documenting the stuff, that's the second big step. And there's a lot of people interested in doing that.
That's really exciting, Russ. I'm really thrilled to hear about the possible viewer. What a great resource. Well, let's move on. Image number 2 here is obviously a shipwreck of some sort, and it looks like a much higher resolution bathymetric map with some dots on it. How are these images related, and what are they showing us in the sanctuary?
Yeah, so I cheated. I put 2 images together, so we get 2 for 1 with this one. So the image on the left, the shipwreck image, that is one of the new finds in the sonar survey. That is the tug Satisfaction, which has been looked at by the state of Wisconsin, and press release has been done on that. The coordinates are not out there yet, so we'll follow the lead of our state partners. But it's a cool wreck site. But this image, what's so interesting about it is we did a quick dive on this and did some photogrammetry. That's on our Sketchfab website. But in the foreground of this image is purple stuff. And I worked for a lot of years in Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary and Lake Huron. And there's a submerged sinkhole in the sanctuary that has this exact kind of bacteria, or what I thought might be this exact kind of bacteria. So it was really interesting to see this cyanobacteria at the edge of a shipwreck site. You know, like we've seen this before in Middle Island sinkhole and Lake Huron, where it's a very sulfur-rich environment, a lot of groundwater coming out. So it was just interesting to see this purple mat. So I shared this image with some colleagues at the Great Lakes Environmental Research Lab, and it looks like it's kind of the same stuff. Now this opens up, we haven't been back to look at this, and we need to put a project together to go do this. But so there's an interesting part of the sanctuary here. That is this bacteria that's growing out there. You know, why is it there? What's it doing? In Lake Huron, this is really analogous to some of the first oxygen producing bacteria that populated planet Earth, you know, 1 billion years ago. So there's lots of scientific follow-up to be done in this. And what the sanctuary is really good at is being kind of a matchmaker. So we can stumble across something like this and then hand it off to people that really want to follow up on it and can tell its story and find out what its meaning and value is. So that's that one. It's really interesting. I maybe you have, and then others have, but I had never seen something like that near shore here in Lake Michigan near Shipwreck. On the right-hand side is sort of a similar deal. During the mapping that was done in 2021 and 2022, we found all of these puck marks in the data. And the data that's really far offshore, that's maybe 17, 20 miles offshore, you tend to use a slightly lower frequency sonar to get a wider swath, but you get a little less detail. But these popped up, and these are in about 500 feet of water, 480, 500 feet of water, and there's lots of them. I think that little cursor there, that line measures about 34 kilometers. So what the heck is going on here? I know you have been out there almost coincidentally within the same couple of weeks, I think, that we had done this mapping. You had been out there and stumbled across these as well. So you know more about them than we do. In a couple of weeks, we're going to take an underwater autonomous vehicle out there and do some close-up mapping and video and photographs to really get a sense of what these might be. The bigger point is mysterious, right? And you don't know what's on the bottom of Lake Michigan until you map it. One of my favorite analogies for the value of mapping comes from a colleague over in Michigan, Hans Van Sommer, and you know, he says it's like trying to manage a city without knowing where the roads are, where the sewer lines are, where the power lines are. So if you're trying to manage a place like Lake Michigan, or even a part of it, without a map, you're really flying blind. And when we map these places, inevitably, we find new things out about them. And in this case, a whole bunch of geological features, which are, I think, new to just about everyone. Certainly, folks in our circle had never seen these before. So an interesting find and more work to be done out there. But you may know more about these, and I know you do. You want to talk about them?
Well, I mean, a little bit. I have my theories about what they are, but when we ran them over, Dusty Cliffman and I were looking for a shipwreck, and we started noticing these things at about 2 in the morning. We were searching through the night, and we do a double take. I thought we were seeing things, giant craters on the bottom of the lake, and Dusty flew his ROV over them, and we got to see what they really look like on the bottom in 500 feet of water. We were, kind of gobsmacked, and I contacted the Great Lakes Environmental Research Laboratory, NOAA's science centers over in Ann Arbor, and they were real interested. The jury's out. I'm looking forward to finding out what they discover about them. Turns out there are more, I think, in other places too. So there's a story to be told there, and I think the sanctuary can play a major role in telling it. So very exciting stuff, Russ. Let's move along. I think we've got another very interesting image from you. This is somebody getting ready to deploy some sort of oh no, it looks like the deck of a big vessel with a bunch of mooring buoys on it. What is this in the sanctuary, and what are they doing?
Yeah, so this is a shot from the Thunder Bay National Marine Sanctuary a couple of years ago. This is the Coast Guard buoy tender spar, which works out of Duluth. It's a 220-foot long buoy tender. It's got a huge crane on it. And we were able to install moorings at many of the tech wrecks off of Presqu'île in that area of the sanctuary. And that was really a first. We had not really done that before, to put moorings in. I think the deepest one is in about 300 feet of water. It's probably on the Choctaw or the Uchurio, something like that. But these are really popular dive sites, and we hadn't really figured out how to put a decent mooring on them. So we figured that out. This year, we're working with the Coast Guard to do this in Wisconsin. And so those are the surface buoys, the white ones there in the foreground, and they've got a radar reflector, they've got a light, they stand about 4 feet off the surface. So we work with lake carriers and the Coast Guard to make sure these are not going to be in the way of commercial navigation. So we hope to get about 20 of these out in August. We'll work off the same vessel, and essentially we'll deploy 2,000-pound mooring blocks with an up line to a subsurface at about 40 feet, and then another line that comes to the surface attached to those white buoys, and then a tag line to tie your boat up to. So of course the whole idea is to make it easier to go visit these amazing places, but also prevent any anchor damage that might happen when folks have to grapple them to tie into them to make a safe dive. So this is really good for the wreck. It's good for recreational divers, technical divers, and dive charters that go out in this area. We want to make it easier for people to go visit these places and do it responsibly. So like I said, we're aiming to get about 20 of these out in August.
Very cool, Russ. I think this is a big protection for the wrecks, because there've been a number of instances just in my lifetime where charter boats, without meaning to, have dragged anchors across wrecks and torn pieces off. So this is going to negate the need to have to hook a wreck, especially these deep wrecks. So kudos to the sanctuary for doing this important work to protect these really important, in some cases pristine, historic wrecks. Let's move along. All right, so this one's got me a little baffled. Is this somebody paddling over a shipwreck? And is this in the sanctuary?
This is, and it is, yeah. So, one of the things way back when the sanctuary was nominated by the communities here along the lakeshore in the state of Wisconsin, they had a really big vision for this place. And folks may not know, but the sanctuary was actually nominated by the communities here in the lakeshore in the state of Wisconsin, and moved its way through designation. But this is a totally new way to create sanctuaries, and Wisconsin was one of the first to be done this way, really sort of a grassroots kind of bottom-up way. Previously, it was a little bit more of a top-down process. So one of the things that the communities really wanted the sanctuary to take part of, to partner with them on, is promoting tourism and recreation. And so this is a wreck off of Raleigh Point in Two Rivers. It's called the Continental. You know the history of this one way better than I do. It's a freighter. One of the really cool things about it, the steam engine is still present. It's in about 30 feet of water. And so this steam engine comes way up to the surface, and in low water, well, it's in less than that, 15 or so feet of water. When the water levels are low, you can actually see the steam engine poking out. So On a good day, you can paddle out of Point Beach. This is a little bit north of the park. And go enjoy a snorkel, a paddle around this, and see a shipwreck up close for yourself. So it turns out there are others around Raleigh Point. It's a very sandy area, very dynamic, lots of beach shipwrecks that then become covered in sand. It's very dynamic. So some years they're uncovered. Susie Johnson, a local Manitowoc Two Rivers resident, used to have a powered parachute, and so she would fly over this area. She found many of the wrecks on Raleigh Point. So we have an effort this year to put mooring buoys out on these wrecks. There's maybe 6, I think we're going to do. And these are, the traditional round mooring balls, so that if you're on the beach and you want to go for a snorkel or a paddle, you're able to find these things more easily. And then we'll work with the city and others to create, wayfinding along the lakeshore, interpretive materials that are online, and really begin to promote this place as, a place that you can get into the sanctuary and go see some of this history for yourself. It's an interesting area. It's the kind of thing you want to do on a good day. It's Lake Michigan, and that's part of the interesting part, I think, about paddling. This isn't a protected bay where you can go and 100% of the time you're going to see this stuff. It really is kind of adventure tourism. And sometimes by going out and, paddling out to one of these things, and maybe it's a little rough, maybe the viz isn't as good as you hoped it was going to be, it does remind you of how dynamic Lake Michigan is. And that, it's a place that has a lot of personality. And so this is a place to choose your adventure and go out and check out some of these shipwrecks for yourself.
That sounds really cool, Russ. I think Raleigh Point in particular is such an amazing area, and I can't resist the chance to plug your coworker Caitlin, who did a wonderful job on the Rec Wednesday today. I don't know if those of you who know, but the Sanctuary every Wednesday publishes Rec Wednesday on the Sanctuary's Facebook page, where they write up one of the historic wrecks in the Sanctuary. And Caitlin wrote up the James Nava, which we think is one of the big wrecks buried under the beach there at Raleigh Point Lighthouse. So excellent write-up by Caitlin, and a really cool area, especially to be able for the public to just go and see a shipwreck, up close and personal themselves. All right, let's move on. So this one really had me intrigued, being kind of a tech geek myself. Looks like somebody's deploying a rather large, I hesitate to call it a towfish because it's got its own propeller. Is this happening in the sanctuary? And tell me about this equipment.
It is. This is a grant funded project we did in 2021, funded by NOAA's Ocean Exploration Program. And again, another plug here for the sanctuary being sort of an attractor of resources. So we co-wrote this grant with the University of Delaware and the University of Miami. And the idea was to bring autonomous technology to the sanctuary to see if we could find shipwrecks in a couple of different environments. So we had a magnetometer that we hung from a drone, actually at Raleigh Point. And we really were looking for some of those buried wrecks that you mentioned that are there under the sand. We had this gizmo. This is an autonomous underwater vehicle with a sonar on it. And the idea is, this has a small personnel footprint. It's an efficient way to map. And so we really, a lot of the stuff was kind of proof of concept, but the idea was to deploy this and inspect specific targets. Here, I think we're out on the Vernon doing kind of a test, just seeing, can we create a mission for this thing? It'll dive down in 220 feet of water. It'll stay at an altitude that you tell it to stay at, and it'll run lines up and down. In this case, the Vernon, a steamer that's on about 200 feet of water off Two Rivers, and map it in high resolution and detail. It can also do photographs, so you could do a mosaic and that kind of thing. The other piece of equipment we had during this project was a 30-foot autonomous vessel with a multi-beam strapped to it. And these are pretty common in the ocean. Fleets of these roam the ocean. The one we had is capable of operating 5 days, sort of by itself. It's a diesel powered boat with a multi-beam on it, but it's autonomous. And the idea is you have somebody back in a control room somewhere that's kind of guiding this thing along, watching it, and that sort of thing. So our idea was, could we get this big surface beast out there, map a whole bunch of bottom land or bottom, and then when we find something, deploy this gizmo to do a close-up inspection. So it was sort of a proof of concept. The cool thing about exploration, and this grant in particular, is kind of about pushing the envelope and bring technology to bear, in this case, to help with archaeology. The surface vehicle had its share of issues, so we didn't map as much as we wanted to, but the concept kind of works, right? If you can map a big area, and then within the same window of time, with, so let's say we have a week-long project, be able to deploy something like this to get follow-up information. Because as you know, often you're looking for a shipwreck and you may get a great sonar hit, but then, it takes almost another expedition to figure out what tool you bring to the equation next to really follow up on that. So this is an underwater vehicle that'll get really close-up, high-resolution sonar data. This, interestingly, too, this is a student. And this is the other cool thing about the sanctuary as a living classroom. So this was a PhD student from the University of Delaware. We had 2 other students that were graduate students, and then they came to the sanctuary. They operated this stuff, which was really amazing to see them in action, get real-world experience, work in an environment like Lake Michigan. So you're doing a 2-for-1. You're getting great data for the sanctuary. You're learning a lot about technology, trying out new things, and students are getting a great education here along the way.
Very cool, Russ. I think I'd be scared to death to drop it.
Yeah, and I have to point out, this is not a no employee because it doesn't have closed-toed shoes, but hey, you can do what you want when you're with the university. He is wearing a life jacket, so that's good.
Well, let's see if we can work in one more question here for you before we close. So you sent me this one, and I thought, I know I've been there. That's the Roger Street Fishing Village Museum. What's the sanctuary doing with them these days? They seem like a really cool little museum.
Yeah, it is. It's a fantastic museum with lots of artifacts from Ralph Simmons and the Vernon and a few others. So we're working with the communities. We have a little bit of funding to do small exhibits in each of the communities along the lakeshore, the kind of the principal communities in the sanctuary, or that, we're behind the sanctuary effort. So that's Two Rivers, Manitowoc, Sheboygan, and Port Washington. And there's so much opportunity to work with these folks. So we're going to work with Roger Street in the fall and do an exhibit and support that with funding, support that with graphic design and that sort of thing. We met with their board a few months ago. We had some of our exhibit people from our headquarters in Silver Spring come out, and so we can just bring people to this equation to help update some exhibitry, create new exhibitry, and that's an important part of what the sanctuary does. And so we're excited, they're excited. Where this thing goes and what it ultimately looks like is really up to the Roger Street Fishing Village folks, but we're excited to work with them and bring resources to the table to help get this done and promote visitation. There's a lot of artifacts in there, so we could do something around the artifacts to enhance the displays, that sort of thing. So there's lots to do there, but if folks haven't been to the Roger Street Fishing Village, you got to check it out. It's a fascinating place right there on the, I guess it would be the West Twin River, I think.
Yep.
In Two Rivers. Yep.
Very cool. That's really cool that you guys are able to work with them. It's one of my favorite little museums and really a hidden gem. So again, make sure you visit if you haven't. Russ, we had a question come in. Maybe you can give a quick answer for earlier in the program. When the mooring buoy discussion was on, will the buoys be in the water year round, or are they just seasonal?
The buoys will be seasonal. The tackle will stay in the water, so that subsurface will always be there at 40 feet, but we'll take the buoys off each year. So, something like May 1st to October 1st, that would be an ideal time frame for them to be in the water. So that'll be part of the seasonal cadence of the sanctuaries to get those out every spring and take them in the fall.
Very cool. Well, Russ, we are out of time. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on our second edition of Submerged History. It's been a lot of fun. Just a couple of housekeeping things. This is going to be on again next month, and we'll have Kevin Cullen the interim director of the Wisconsin Marine Maritime Museum, is going to be our guest. Also, again, don't forget, this weekend is our field school in Manitowoc on using high-resolution side scan for archaeological site mapping. Contact me if you want to participate in the classroom portion. And this program will be uploaded to YouTube and shared widely on social media if you didn't get to catch it live. So, Russ, thanks again so much.
Yeah, thank you, Brendan. Really appreciate it.
All right. Good night, everybody.